Hello there, you're welcome to the editorial to your broadcasting from Canada. I am Sandra Asante. Today we're looking at Eritrea's fought for independence and the awaiting freedom. So stay tuned, I'll be back after the break. You're welcome back from the break. So Eritrea is officially marking 30 years of independence from Ethiopia. Former BBC Tigrayan editor Samuel Gabrihiwat was a soldier who fought for independence. He writes about his expressions on battlefield and how hopes were dashed as Eritrea became a repressive one-party system. During our 30-year armed struggle for independence, we lived with war every hour of every day. We got used to pain and sacrifice. Many of us were wounded 2 or 3 times during fighting. We were quickly patched up and marched into more battles. I still wonder how we managed to cover ground from Kurera, the northern tip of Eritrea, to Dumera, the southern tip, sleeping in trenches and climbing every mountain and valley. I was among the fortunate ones. About 65,000 to our fighters died in combat. I joined the Liberation Army as a 16-year-old in 1982 after hearing tales about Eritrean-Ethiopian aggression and jealous of the glamour image of the freedom fighters with their long hair, short and AK-47s. I received a few months of training in the Ari Valley. We learned how to attack and retreat, how to camouflage ourselves, and how to use weapons including grenade and RPGs. So let's look at the day of celebration. Filled with joy, we traveled by boat to Massawa. We were then loaded 2 lorries to go to the capital, Asmara, a journey that took about 3 hours. We crossed the Ethiopian military southern checkpoint. It was unmanned. The Ethiopian soldiers had abandoned it. There was a dreamlike atmosphere in Asmara. People in the city dropped everything to welcome the independent fighters. They broke into impromptu gwala, that is a traditional music and dance on the streets of the capital as well as other towns and villages. Before that momentous day, the people of Asmara were totally besieged. The airports were constantly being bombed. There was a strict curfew. Then on the 24th of May, everything changed. Mothers abandoned earthen pots on their fenelo, that is the coal stove, forgot the fire in the mogogo, that is the ovens, and walked out of their coffee ritual to join the welcome party. People carrying palm leaves, which are often used in celebrations, invaded the streets. Every palm tree was stripped. The young ones climbed onto the tanks that rode in and waved their palm leaves. The celebration went on for days and nights. There were much anxiety amid the euphoria as there were many parents out on the street with picture frames in their hands. They were asking the arriving fighters about the whereabouts of their children. Did they make it back? Did they die? I remember Sejun Teshaye, the designated fighter photographer, taking pictures of the momentous occasion as his unit rode in. I also remember 2 members of our unit, Gadel and Abaye, coming face to face with their family members while they are still on the back of the lorry. The joy, the screams, the tears. Gidel's father was so overjoyed he beat his chest with his palm branch. I found my son, I have found my son, was all that came out of his mouth as he ran into the front of our lorry. Abaye, the female fighter who was in the driver's compartment, recognized her mother-in-law and tried to jump off the lorry, almost injuring herself. We were accompanied by cheering crowds all over the Albergo Cayo, a hotel in the capital. Later, we were told by our commanders that we could go out and look for our family members, those of us who had relatives in town. It was not easy to find them in a couple of hours after years away, but we did. We all hoped that Eritrea was going to flourish, and we lived happy ever after. That was quite very exciting issues there. So let's look at the war with the neighbors. In 1993, on the eve of the second anniversary of Eritrea's independence, the ex-fighters protested and asked their leaders to listen to their grievances. They forced their leaders to call a meeting in Asmara main stadium. We understand your problems. It is a common problem, and we will resolve the situation together, was the answer given. As soon as the protest was over, the leaders secretly detained the protest leaders one by one over a few days. Soon after, they were sentenced to jail terms ranging from 1 to 15 years. They paid a heavy price for highlighting their plight. They ended up becoming victims. Many said that the regime was following a path of dictatorship. Others called for patience, saying the constitution that Eritreans have been promised would be drafted and the country would head towards democracy. None of this happened. Eritrea remains one-party state, having never held an election to choose the president or government. In the meantime, Eritrea has found itself at war with all its neighbors at some point: Yemen in 1995, Sudan in 1996, Ethiopia from 1998 to 2000, and Djibouti in 2008. The country lost tens of thousands more young lives. Now, Eritrea troops are involved in the fifth conflict since independence. They are in Ethiopia's Tigray region, fighting alongside Ethiopian troops against Tigray's People Liberation Front, that is the TPLF. The TPLF was in power in Ethiopia when Eritrea achieved its independence and during the 1998 to 2000 border war between two nations. In the meantime, aftermath of independence, I joined the ruling party supported cultural troop, hoping to honor freedom fighters and help build the country. I wrote plays and songs and took part in performances. One of the Eritrea's most famous musicians, Helen Miles, sang one of our songs, Masawa, Where Are Your Precious Children? Later, I worked as a journalist for a government-owned newspaper till I went to exile. Now, is change inevitable or not in Eritrea? The little political space that existed came to end after Ethiopia-Eritrean border war. The government became gripped with a siege mentality as it feared destabilization from Ethiopia and accountability from its own citizens over conflict that many believed could have been avoided through dialogue. In September 2001, the government ordered a crackdown. 11 top officials and many middle-ranking cadres who supported the idea of reform were arrested. Later, they were thrown into prisons, never to be heard of again. 11 journalists who were publishing the grievances, letters and calls of the reformist group were also detained. Their newspapers were banned. Among them was my good friend and colleague Sayom, the photographer who captured the momentum's time of independence. None of them were brought to an independent court and their whereabouts remain unknown. Eritrea remains one-party state that has not held a national election since independence. There is no free press or independent civil society group. All international NGOs and local civic organizations are banned. Official statistics show that healthcare and education have improved since independence, but it is difficult to believe them. With limited jobs prospect and other prospect of years of compulsory unpaid military services. Many young people continue to live in the country seeking asylum in other African states or Europe. But many of us have not given up hope. We believe change is inevitable, and Eritrea will realize the promises made by its martyrs. So we believe that we will be free again in Eritrea. We believe that we can host or have an elections to be free from aggression. So thank you so much for joining me. This is where I end the tutorials. My name is Sandra Asante. Thanks so much for watching.